I'm here to pay my mom's bill.
So you're her, right? You're the boxer?
Yeah, golden girl.
USA Boxing hasn't won a gold medal since 2004.
Yeah, well, none of them boxers was Clarissa, was it?
As long as I'm boxing, I'm gonna be okay.
Hello, ShotDeck friends. Let's go. We got a sports movie to talk about. I love sports movies. We've got this incredible movie directed by Rachel Morrison, the famed ex-cinematographer, I would say, I guess. Are you done? No, never say never?
No, I'm still a cinematographer. You don't stop being a cinematographer.
I hope not. I hope not. But yes, Rachel Morrison of fame, of great renown, is now directing and doing it exceptionally well, and has directed an amazing film biopic and sports film about a boxer called The Fire Inside, which you can see starting December 25th, right?
Yeah.
And with Rachel, we have the cinematographer Rina Yang, famous for a number of great music videos and commercials. And well, let me start right here. Let me start with, how did you guys hook up? How did you find Rina? Had you worked with Rina before, and why Rina?
Rina and I knew each other and were, friends, and I think mutual admirers of each other's work. We hadn't worked together before. I mean, I hadn't hired many DPs because I was busy DPing. And I first started this project a million years ago when I was young and naive. And actually with Caitlin Arizmendi, and the pandemic shut us down. And then we had a bunch of false starts almost coming back. And in that time, Kate was offered a project that she was like, can you promise we're going? And I was like, I can't promise anything. This is a crazy industry we're in. So she went off to do something else. And then of course we got the green light. But I had been a fan of Rina's work, and in particular in like the commercial and music video space, and just, a lot of beautiful elevated lighting. And I was looking, I think, first and foremost, I was like, do I want to hire a DP who shoots just like me so I don't have to think about it? And then I kind of came around to, no, the best collaborations I have are the ones that are dynamic, so you're not just sort of falling back on the thing, but things are kinetic and propulsive, and you're talking about, what about this and what about that, and who bring you, like, basically, like when you have people who bring different things to the table, it elevates both of you, hopefully. And so I really love what Rina does. I can be so inherently naturalistic, and Rina has a whole different skill set, and I was like, this could be really exciting, especially for a movie that's trying to toe a line between being kind of gritty and natural, but and bigger and spectacle, but not being. I think either of us love like studio gloss. So yeah, Rina, you want to jump in?
Well, before Rina jumps in, it's funny because you say that, because I think you nailed it, in the sense of, I would say, how would I define the look of the film? This film is that it's inherently authentic and naturalistic, and yet has this commercial thing to it. And maybe it's funny when you say somebody who shoots like me, or it made me think, how do you define yourself, Rina, when you were approached this? Well, let me ask you this before you even say that, is when Rachel says somebody who shoots like me, how would you say you shoot? Because it's a funny question, but it's real. It's like how you sort of think about yourself and as a cinematographer.
I mean, I'd seen Rachel's work before, so I think, I didn't, think about like shoot like Rachel Morrison, or because the script is there, and then I mean, I was just kind of coming on board as myself. So, and it was such a great collaboration, because it felt like Rachel trusted me, and then she had a director's hat on, so I could get on with just being a DP and trying to support my director. So I think in that sense, it wasn't like I have to make sure it looks like Rachel shot it or anything. So
I was not looking for somebody who shot exactly like me. Like I want, I think it not, yeah, I mean, I think that would, then I would just shoot it myself, although that would
Yeah.
stop. Yeah.
that would have been a lot.
A lot.
What were those early discussions? I mean, what were some of the things that you guys did to like get this ball rolling and prepping, and how did you sort of approach dissecting the script together and separately, if that's how you work as well?
The documentary had a lot of impact on us because I love the it's called T-Rex, was it? Or the film is basically based on I think that I kind of drew a lot of kind of inspiration from that, but not necessarily to replicate the visual, but getting to know like where she, what kind of environment does she grow up in, and then the community, and then the feeling of the space that she grew up in. So that was kind of one of the main, like a research material, as well as the book, the photo book that the filmmakers of the documentary made, and I love that book.
And then I think we really, we talked about wanting it to be incredibly experiential. Like for me, it's, you have such an opportunity with filmmaking to build empathy by, putting your audience squarely in another person's shoes. And so like, I wanted to people to walk away from the movie feeling like they'd lived Clarissa's life for a little bit. And I think, especially with boxing films, there's actually a real tendency sometimes to be very objective and kind of spectator-like, where it's a lot of long lenses through, 5 cameras, long lens, through the ropes, chaos. And we didn't want that. Like, I think it was very clear that we were going to let, her experience and the emotional stakes drive every decision. And sometimes that means like not being fancy because it's going to be distracting. Oftentimes, as we all know, like you have to make this choice about, how much you want to just like serve the story versus, look at all these beautiful shots we can make and these cool dynamic camera moves. But it's like half the time those moves are really, they take you out, actually, like at a subconscious level they do, And so I think when we started to break down the script and shot list, it was always like, okay, what is she feeling right now? And how do we show that visually? How do we show the difference between her fighting in China without her coach and how isolated and alone she feels versus, when she's got her coach by her side? Like, what does that look like? So I think those were like the conversations we were having.
Do you have that same method of prepping that you did as a cinematographer, Rachel, that you then applied to your directing work?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things that, the advantage we have as cinematographers, even moving into the directing space, is like 20 years of set experience, right? And like for me, I love shot listing mostly because even the best first ADs, well, a 5-page day is a 5-page day, and then it's not. The second you shot list, you can look at the schedule and be like, okay, well, this day is 36 setups and this day is 18. Like, let's actually ignore the page count and make our days reasonable. So like I start from a place sometimes of just the logistical, like you shot list, what your schedule looks like and what's insane and where you have some room. And then I think it's a very similar approach, I guess, and I think that's how you run an efficient set too, is like sort of how to move through space in a way that makes sense. Yeah, and then I personally like hate storyboarding because I find
Me
it
too.
so rigid, and like suddenly people are, but he's this big in this frame, and it's a low angle, and you're like, what? Like this was some guy who's like barely out of film school, if he even went to film school, or she like drawing. Everything becomes a crane shot because, or everything needs to be flying through the sky for no reason. So it's like what was nice, to be honest, about directing is like now when I say things, people listen. So I'm like, we don't need storyboards, guys. Like we just need a shot list. And like, if we have access to the locations, like then we can take some stills in the real space. But it's almost just like, yeah, people now I can do things with Rina's needs in mind too, and be like, oh, we're not shooting facing north. We're not, our days are kind of built around things that make sense for my cinematographer, and I can kind of protect her in that way.
And Rina, what was your prep experience like? You've done a bunch of narrative, certainly in the television world and all that. I can't recall, is this your first sort of narrative feature, not non-documentary, or you had done?
I've done TV shows previously, and also I did a film called Nanny that was indie movie that was later bought by Amazon MGM. But this was my actually first studio movie.
And
But
what did that, yeah, even when you say it's a studio, like, did that feel different? Like, did it
it,
put anything on you, or was it just,
well, it was actually quite a unique situation because when we were shooting, everyone told us to savor this because we'll never have it like this again. Because it felt like we were making indie movie because, I just needed to know that Rachel was happy with what we were getting instead of getting studio notes. Maybe like Rachel, you can elaborate on the situation.
It was a very specific, unique situation. So basically, Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi were our execs, and day 2 of our shoot, they left to go run Warner Brothers, your studio, I believe, and nobody came in to replace them right away. So we literally were making a studio movie with nobody watching our dailies, nobody giving us notes, like for better, for
that's
what.
the way,
First,
that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be.
it
Trust the
is. I
filmmaker.
mean, it was a little scary as a first time feature director. It's still studio-ish budget, and like I had zero oversight. Literally, I would like look at Rina and look at my first AD and be like, I think we got it. What do you guys think? And Rina would be like, okay,
Yeah.
great, hang on, we're good. There's nobody weighing in on anything. So you're just like hoping that it's gonna work, but thankfully it did.
Yeah, and then towards the end of principal photography, Amazon bosses started watching our rushes, and we got the news that they love it. We were like, "Oh, thank God!" But I guess we're not gonna get any notes because we're about to wrap principal photography. So it was great. I laughed that it was just like me, my director, and then just make sure that we're getting what we want instead of kind of the politics getting in the way. Yeah.
And actually, also, we had this amazing camera op holding for us for the better part of 2 years.
Mm.
A week before we started shooting, his name's Mike Heathcote. He shot all the creeds. He's a real, especially like boxing specialist, and he did a lot of the rehearsals with us. And then a week before we were supposed to shoot, he tore his abdomen. And when things were so busy in Toronto and you couldn't get anybody, so our ops were like this hodgepodge cobbled together, like we get, one person for a few days and one person. And so as a result, it was also like, well, I'm just gonna, Rina, first of all, Rina does a lot of amazing work with like live mixing the lighting. And so she wasn't as like married to having to operate. And I wasn't worried about stepping on anybody's toes because they were like visitors on our set. So I also got to be like in the ring, doing the thing that I do. Again, no oversight. I'd be like, Rina, how'd I do? Great. Like that was a little shaky. Go again. All right, good.
Yeah, I was kind of honest. I was like, that was a bit too. Let's do like I'll be like that was too shaky. Let's do one that's a little bit calmer, kind of. So I was like, it's just we were really honest with each other. I'm not gonna say it was great, but like it's good for her to have those options, like one energetic and one maybe calmer, depending on how we end up editing the movie. So it was just like great to balance that.
Did you guys, just an aside, but to see The Fall Guy, how Emily Blunt in that movie, she's like an operator turned director.
Yeah, I've seen that.
As a director operates every shot. I love that way to like make sure the director was active in the movie and not just sitting in a chair behind a monitor. And I'm like, it made me think of you, Rachel, where you're like, all right, I'm directing and operating. But you guys both operated your in your lives, and it's an interesting thing because even as a director, it's one of those things. I get it. I get that sometimes you sort of want to keep that camera on your shoulder and go for it.
Well, and the other thing that's nice about it that I'm finding is I don't have to stop down. Like as soon as you yell cut, as you know, it's like everybody comes running in, the energy gets sucked out of the room, people are, touching up hair and makeup, and then you're trying to like ramp your actor back into it. And so then to be able to like literally, I can reset myself because I'm the one holding the camera and like just keep the actor in it. It's worth the dues, my local 600 dues.
Wait, let's jump into a clip. Rina, why don't you talk over this? When you talk about the immersiveness of this film and how you attack the boxing.
Yeah, so this is the only one in the movie, and it's I love watching it because it was really challenging to achieve this, because we were on the real location, and we couldn't bring the big crane down, and we were trying to figure out how to do this shot, and I think we ended up doing something like 15, 17 takes, and we had no fallback plan. We knew that we wanted it to be a oneer, so we weren't going to get any safety takes or safety shots that we could potentially cut away from if it didn't work. And when we started doing it, it wasn't quite working. So just like the technical side of things, because we had to, arm up, pick all out on the crane, and then we had to have the operator, climb into the ring, and also to get the beats right with the punches, and to sell the punches whilst it being the oneer, and so it was all very challenging in that sense. But we managed to get good takes. I love watching it. And Rachel is briefly in the shot. If you can spot it, someone maybe frame grab it and then put it up on the
Now,
shot.
now I'm looking for it. Yeah, absolutely. Tell me more specifically the shot itself. So you're pushing it on a crane. Is it a release? Is like a magnet release of a camera?
Yeah.
How, tell me more specifically how
I think it was Ronin or Moby. I can't remember. Ronin with, I think it was a magnet release with a safety attached to it. So I think the problem we had on the day was that we were feeling the camera being detached from the crane, so we were trying to smooth out that moment. Which we managed to do after dozens of takes. But yeah, well, Rachel, you wanna take over?
Yeah, I mean, it was so basically we two grips holding the ropes open while the operator climbed in, and then detached. I think it was a 32-foot crane, something like that, but detached the Ronin. And yeah, we were just feeling that bump. And it was, for me, it was maybe thankfully the only moment on the film where I was like, oh, we have, like, as Rina was saying, we have no backup plan. Because it actually kind of was like an indie film. Like, this wasn't our whole day. This was like the first 4 hours of the day, and then a company move, and then we had a whole other scene to shoot. And so when it wasn't working, I had this sinking feeling, like I don't know how to suddenly tell this story in some other way. It had to be this. And then ultimately, I think we figured out that the magnet was just too magnetic. I think it was like literally like a piece of Scotch tape or something to just take some of the force out of the magnet, and then it started working. But I think the reason we chose this as a oneer was that we had nothing that we had to communicate except for what a badass our lead actress, slash Clarissa Shields is now. Sometimes with oneers, I find that you're really having to sacrifice, you can't have both eye lines at the same time. Who are we seeing at each moment? And like, you're sacrificing a little bit of story for style. And in this case, there was no story. Like, literally, it's just she's a force. And I think it's a great way to show, so clearly not a stunt person, like couldn't have ever been a stunt person, and just to show how incredible she is. And she really did. She sold every punch herself.
It makes me think, so wait, so I guess you never go back in a full 360 where you would see the crane base, or did you try to remove that out?
No, we had a background extras filing in in front of the crane to hide it, so you would see it, but yeah, I mean, you don't see it in show because the extras are hiding the crane.
I mean, one of the things that makes me think of this is, and this is something that speaks to the larger philosophy of the film's aesthetic, which is this environmental lighting, right? So obviously when you do a shot like this, you're lighting 360, right? So you've got these window lights, and then it always makes me think, oh, is there a camera shadow potential issue, and those kind of things when you're doing when you're circling within these kind of spaces. How do you attack these big spaces like this? And tell me a little bit more specifically, Rina, about what's coming through those windows, the fluorescence, and how you sort of approach when you're seeing everywhere all at once.
Yeah, I tend to like light in the environment rather than specifically light in, where the actors might stand. I might add a special once I see the blocking, but this was because I knew that we'd have to look everywhere. Well, maybe other than maybe 45 to 90 degrees that we didn't see in the corner. That's where we were all wedged in and hiding in the closet, trying to execute the shot. But outside the windows, we had 20K mole beams outside punching through. I tend to use tungsten for sunlight, unless I really need to use HMI. So we had those all over the windows. And the fluorescents, we didn't have time or money to switch out everything to whatever I could control. So I had to be selective how many fixtures I can swap out in the ceiling. So we did that. And I mean, throughout the movie, like Rachel mentioned earlier, that I would live fade or up and down the lights, so I would change the intensities during the take, depending on where we were looking. Not in this fight. I don't remember doing the levels on this one, but other fights that because we were literally looking 360, I would have the lights rigged like 360, but then I would ride it, so I will kill the camera side to, just so we don't have the camera shadows. And so that's something I was doing throughout the movie. But this one, yeah, I really like the look of this, the location and how it turned out. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you guys shot on and lenses, just because it was one of the notes I made even when I saw the film in the theater.
Mm.
The bloom in the lighting, the bloom in the highlights, and the bloom in the windows and bare bulbs and stuff. Is tell me a little bit of how you achieved that.
Mm. So that's something, because for phase one and round one, it was originally Alexa LF before the pandemic. But then when it came back round, the Venice Rialto was available. And both Rachel and I tested Venice and Alexa, and we felt that once we are in the DI, we can't really tell which is which. I guess if you treat the sensor right on set. So then, we felt that the Rialto is definitely going to be beneficial for us because we had so many small locations, and although we did build a few sets, we were always kind of in the room or wedged in the corner or in the car, or we wanted to be with Clarissa in the boxing ring, so we decided that the Rialto would be the right choice. I did stick to the original choice, which was Pana Speeds, but I spoke to Guy Vicker at Panavision to modify the lens again for Venice, just to lower the contrast a little bit more, because it was made for the LF. So yeah, then I also kind of amped up the halation because I tend to use some sort of diffusion, say Black Promise or Hollywood Black Magic, and then I didn't really want to put filter in front of the lens on this one, so we went a little heavier on the halation and diffusion, but then on set I actually ended up adding diffusion because I missed a little bit more. But maybe I feel like I'm past that phase now. Maybe next movie I probably wouldn't do halation this much.
and that was the one that was interesting because it's probably a generational thing, but we were always trying to get away from the kind of soap opera diffusion blooming high. So there was definitely moments where I was like, please, no more diffusion filters. Or like, I was like our poor SFX woman was like, Rina would be always wanting more haze. And I'd be like, a little bit less. Like, I like haze.
Yeah.
It was like mom and dad are fighting again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also, I think when I shoot on Venice, I tend to use a little bit more haze, and then I think lower the contrast a little bit more. And it's also another funny thing about this generational thing is when we were shot listing, I would say, okay, slow zoom. Let's still slow zoom here. And Rachel was worried, like, slow zoom is so old. I'm like, no, Rachel, slow zoom is back. Like, it's in fashion again. I mean, I love slow zooms. It's one of, like, it's just so different from dolly tracking. It feels more like internal, like, it just feels so different. And in some moments in the scene, it felt like it was a slow zoom rather than tracking. And then I was like, Rachel, don't worry, trust me, it's not gonna be, no one's gonna come at you.
The compromise was like we would blend the zoom with a dolly move. Like I was like, I can't just so that right. I think where we landed was always like a bit of a blend.
By the way, I agree with you, Rita. I'm trying to get some slow zooms into, or some actually even more aggressive zooms into the movie I'm prepping now.
Yeah.
And the last film I did, the director ended up like really jiving with the zoom. I think it's back too. I'm on your side. Yeah, team whatever that is, team slow zoom.
Slow zoom.
And so I had a couple reactions to this film. One, purely, I'm a movie fan. I'm a sports movie fan. Rocky is actually one of my favorite films of all time. And when you really think about the film, it's like it's obviously not about boxing. It's about the human story behind this person trying to succeed. And I found this movie to really be emotional for me. And one of the things that was a note I remember saying to Rachel afterwards was this use of color, this sort of pinkish color, I guess it would be. Let's play the little prom clip for a second, because it comes back in a couple places. It comes back almost as like a representation almost of love. And I don't know if that was intentional. Obviously there's some of the color in the wardrobe as well here, but there's a bowling alley scene when Clarissa and her boyfriend are sort of, falling in love. And there's this prom scene. Tell me a little about, because I found every time it went to this color, I felt really emotional in a way that I've almost hadn't. I thought of, oh, well, color can be emotional in sort of a subconscious way, but it really brought it to the forefront for me, particularly when you go inside to the prom itself. Tell me a bit about also how you capture this verisimilitude, Rachel, in a practical sense. Like, obviously, it's a montage, but how do you sort of get all the pieces together and then start picking it apart and know when you've got it? Or are you just looking for, there's a moment, there's a moment, there's a moment? How do you bring this incredible verisimilitude that's both also really beautiful and artistic, and attack it in a practical sense, not just what ends up on screen?
Well, to speak to the color first, this was actually inspired, the choice of pink was inspired by Clarissa's, it was really her favorite color. And you see it in the documentary, in these photo books, and it's nice because, unlike Rocky, she A is a real person, but B is like a 16, 17-year-old girl. And so you do have this amazing contrast between like a vulnerability and a femininity and a high school, like, not naivete, but like a youthfulness. And then you put her in the ring and she's like a force. I mean, she was already almost predestined to be as great as she ultimately became. And so I think part of what you're feeling is like every time you see this pink, it feels you're back to both being reminded of it's like the hope of young love, the hope of, what the world could be. And I think especially, in Flint, like this is true to their prom. Flint goes all out for prom and like these old cars, the colors, and it really is this, you kind of like can let everything else go and the weight of, a lot of the burdens on the community and really just kind of, it's just sort of hopeful and beautiful. As far as capturing it, I mean, we had some of the same time constraints. Like you would think with a studio movie, again, that a scene or scenes as important as this would have a whole day, but they didn't. This was like, I think on the tail end of the final scene where she's running alongside the bus, then we had to company move and shoot the entire prom, and the scene with them talking. So some of it was just, it's kind of, you're racing around trying to get everything you can, and it's as you said, you sort of clock these moments where you're like, okay, that was a great beat, the script supervisor is trying to keep up with your notes, your hearts or whatever, but it is just like letting the kids have fun and dance and like, and then I think we had one wide lens on a steady cam and then a long lens, you know, and maybe it was on sticks and a slider or something, just trying to pick off pieces.
I see even in the opening shot, it looks like there's a balance of some practicals, you know, the streetlights and stuff. So shot, I guess, in a short window of sorts at duskish.
Yeah.
I think we were actually losing light then, and we were worried because we didn't.
Yeah, I didn't hear.
Yeah, I think now it's coming back to me that it wasn't intentional that the street lights were on, that they came on. I think, and then you know, because I think we killed the ones that's close to our set, but then I think maybe we were behind and the lights were on.
And it was scouted for the backlight and for you can see the sun like wanting to peek through, but then it got socked in. So you get a little bit of the color from that sun. But yeah, I think the intention was actually to have gotten that the nice wash of a, you know.
Yeah, and I think in terms of lighting the prom, you know, it was again I lit it, like it light the environment, just literally just create the party, but I made sure that it's not too fancy or it's more like a true to, hey, if someone put it through, you know, put this party together. So it's, you know, we did have some moving lights, but kept it lo-fi enough that it feels like a prom party. And now it's also coming back to me that I think in terms of the color palette, there was this photo that I liked during the prep. There was two teenagers in love at the party, and there was this like a green laser in the background, and then they had this highlight hitting them. They were silhouetted. And I think when I was talking to Desiree, our amazing lighting programmer, like she was asking what kind of colors I wanted to do for this scene, and you know, I think we were running from we shot something in the morning. We run to this party location. Me and Desiree like standing in the dance floor like during lunch, trying to come up with a color palette. And I was like, oh, you know what? You know, like, oh yeah, like this picture that I've been looking at during the prep. I'd love to, you know, to recreate the color palette, like this teenagers in love. And I think we ended up going for like a green backlight and a bit of pink and some white to kind of clean up the palette. But yeah, that's something we ended up doing.
And I think, you know, we talked about in prep, we talked about which scenes could be a little more like a tone poem and, you know, shooting 40 per second, you know, not quite as like grounded and literal, but more just like, yeah, like a poetic tone to them. So like that was, you know, we knew going into it that we were going to shoot these slow motion.
Well, it also, I think this speaks to that overall thing that I remember thinking, which is it's both, well, and this is a great example of really authentic, but also has this commercial feel that makes it feel, you know, like you're delivering to a much wider audience, you know, and combining what I've also always appreciated, which is how do you make movies that need to deliver to as large a group as possible, but bring that independent spirit and style. You know, that the idea that you're doing a studio movie, you know, doesn't suddenly change all the rules. Is that you bring those same rules to a studio movie, and whether it's Soderbergh allowing that to happen, you know, or any of these indie filmmakers that then go to make, you know, studio films, sort of giving credence to the fact that you can do that. You know, I remember thinking that even in Black Panther, in the opening scene, and the sort of feeling of this grit, I was like, oh, great. We're not just throwing this away because it's a Marvel movie or whatever it is, and allowing that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I remember on Black Panther, like, you know, Ryan and I sort of insisting on some handheld, which I think at the time Marvel had not done a bunch of handheld.
Right. And pushing that through. And then now you probably see it all the time, right? It's like, it's that same thing, you know, for sure.
Yeah, for me, this too, it's like, I think there's something so much more inspiring. And like Clarissa is sort of the real life superhero when you feel like the relatability, when you feel like it's grounded and authentic and it doesn't feel too artificial and glossy. It's like, because then you can see yourself into it, you know?
I mean, you talked about that. There's a documentary, of course, I think T-Rex, that this is based on, and when you're making this film and now you're in charge of the storytelling, adhere to the sort of actual truth? I mean, listen, you guys have all done documentaries as well. It's like truth is, once you start editing anything, there's like you've controlled the truth, right? Is like, did you off the script that Barry wrote and all the things you had at your resources to like say, okay, this is the film, it's about a real person. How did that play into the storytelling and even your decisions as a director? Were you able to veer from it, and how did you choose, and when did you choose to veer from the?
I mean, sure, but actually not that much compared to most films about real events. Like, I feel like if you were to pick this apart, like it's pretty spot on, with one or two kind of exceptions, and obviously we compressed some time. But really, I think it was about using, I mean, their relationship, right? This movie is such a two-hander, and like the magnetic chemistry between Ryan and Brian, Clarissa and Jason, like you feel it in the documentary too. And obviously the complexities with her relationship with her mom and with her dad. But like, I think, I mean, I feel so fortunate, I think, for my first film to have this like really detailed groundwork to build from. And so I wasn't rushing to depart from that. I was rushing certainly to, structurally make it work as a hour and 45-minute movie, and with a structure that's actually very untraditional. But I think that the spirit of the doc and of their lives is really very present in the film. And then, there are even some visuals, Rina, you can speak to this too, but like the documentary filmmakers are awesome and care about the cinematography, and there are moments that are really beautiful in the doc that we actually wanted to kind of pay homage to in the feature.
Did you meet Clarissa? Was she part of the experience of making the film? Was she there at all?
She wasn't on set. So Barry and I showed her an early draft of the script, mostly to get her sign off on the more sensitive material. And, at the time, actually, I remember like Clarissa was like, her big thing, she was totally fine with all of the more sensitive stuff. She was like, I destroyed everybody at the Olympics. Nobody was even close. And I was like, Clarissa, like, when's the last time you watched a sports movie where you literally just like blow through the competition? And so
Right.
it's an example, right, of a cinematic conceit where it's like, we never said that an opponent had more points than they had. Like it's you have to be literal, actually, if you're dealing with the Olympics. Like it is very 3 points, like the points are all accurate, but we made them seem like it was the competition was stiffer, that would be a perfect example of how you sort of adapt reality into the film version of it. And then yeah, I mean, I would text Clarissa things like, what were you listening to in the gym? Like, it's now been years, so like very close, but not, she wasn't over any of our shoulders. She never made it to set. Like she was off, and she's still training and boxing. So she's got better things to do than sit around being an executive producer telling us, that she didn't wear that jacket on a Tuesday.
It's about obviously real life boxer, two-time gold medal winner, Clarissa Shields, who won in London and Rio in 2012 and 2016. And a lot of it's really about a relationship with her coach and then turned, I guess, business manager, Jason Crutchfield, played by Brian Tyree Henry. Obviously, besides the sort of story of her success and her rise as a boxer, the second half of the movie is really about her sort of struggle with earning this money that was expected coming from all the success. Like she's doing this to live a better life. And just how you text some of the sort of more simple scenes.
I think that's an interesting question, because for this particular scene, we had to follow the sun path because we were on location, and then it's many lines to cover. So I think we ran 2 cameras. Even then, the sun wasn't really on my side, so it was actually a really tricky scene to shoot, because we were figuring out where they should sit and how they should sit, and it is a long dialogue scene, and we were slightly worried that is it going to feel a little stagnant, but once we started shooting, the energy of the characters Jason and Ryan, I think that carried the scene.
I am a bully. Floyd a bully, Ward a bully, hell, even Ali was a bully.
Yeah, we understand that.
So I can't be a bully because I'm a girl.
Yeah, I get what y'all saying. I get what you're saying. It's a perception thing,
Exactly.
right? Right.
Oh, so it's my fault now.
Rest.
Some of the things being said in this scene is, it's very important, and I love what she said. It's like, money is recognition, and all that. I think it's one of the message that you take away from this movie is being said in the scene.
What is it, Clarissa? Is it the money? Is it the recognition?
Money is recognition.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting for me watching it now, thinking about the cut, is we have singles for all of these performances. But I think I'm trying to remember how we landed on this, which is mostly 2 shots. And I think probably some combination of the stronger performance was in the 2 shot and seeing their dynamic together. But like there are times when this becomes the only clip that we show where I'm like, no, but we had so much more coverage, but we just didn't choose to use it. And here it's because we stayed, in a single performance. She then stands up and goes to storm off, and we stay and then fall back down to him. But yeah. And the other thing that I remember just looking at this is by the time we were shooting friggin' Toronto in the summer for Flint in the winter. And this scene in particular was like already, it was so green outside. So I think we had to put, I don't know if it's ultra bounce or bleach muzz, but like we had to basically blow out the windows so you didn't see, a beautiful summer day out there.
Again, this would speak to that environmental lighting, right? And yet you have to sort of take it off of its, particularly something like this where there's not even a practical on inside, and you're playing some of the street lights coming through. Tell me how you attack that.
I think, again, like you said, it was more the environmental lighting until they get to the hallway, which was very tricky. And I had to bring in some specials for the close-up. But this is, I think, the example of me writing levels. So depending on where they're standing, I would be, say that, reducing the top light or the ambient in the background. So there's a little bit more shadow. So depending on where they was standing or, moving through the space, I would dim the lights up and down. Once we got to the hallway, it was, because everything was in shot, and I was trying to light the face, and but it being tricky. But then we end up using the good old bounce guard, and I just bounced so small to kind of wrap around the face, and that was actually the best thing we could do. And it turned out well. But I love the energy of this scene. And yeah, I don't know, Rachel, anything to add?
Is there a cove in that sort of living room right here? Is there something? Is that where some of that bounces?
Yeah, there was the ceiling that could fly out. So there's a softbox, and then we would manipulate the size of the softbox.
Well, a lot to add other than trying to keep them in it, like not break the scene up too much. This was probably a 2.5 page, 3-page fight. And so that was my big request to Rina, and I certainly, it's like the DP's worst nightmare, right? Is like, can we run this for a good amount of time, in a small space where you don't have a lot of room to hide things, but to keep the energy and the emotional, to keep them in it. Like, this is a scene that you can't break up too much because they're really ramping up to something, yeah. Anyway, I appreciate that, like, the willingness to play ball,
Well, it made me think, did you ever put Rina in a position where you're like, when a director puts you in a position as a DP, but you're like, yeah, now I'm the director. So, hey, now it's like, let's go.
And I could always apologize, I'd be like, I know that this sucks, but I need to do whatever it was. I need to start with the close-up, or I need to, hold this scene for 1.5 pages, and there are going to be moments where you're like, we'll have to deal with it in post and like whatever. But yeah, I would always do it with empathy, I know I'm putting you in a shitty position, but I'm asking to be able to do this. And the nice thing about the collaboration is that Rina always understood why. And it wasn't like I was asking for no reason. It was, whether it was to keep the actor in it or because whatever it was.
I just think about day exterior and what a fucking pain in the ass it is. And particularly when it's a long dialogue scene. And I'm just kind of curious. Well, I was just thinking about it. Even when I was watching, I was like, sometimes I go to logistics and I'm like, how the fuck did you get him that high? And safely, and I don't know, it's a decently long scene, day exterior. As we know, the sun never stops moving, whether we like it or not. Is how do you approach that?
Yeah, no, he's up on the roof. He was safetied and he did not love it. And I was up on the roof with him. I don't, so I was like, people have to keep me from like doing stupid stuff because I just like bounced around up there. But yeah, no, I mean, he, by virtue of the cable job, like you could frame the safety because he was supposed to be safety. Yeah, Brian did not like that very much. I mean, this isn't a great example because we did end up having to shoot kind of middle of the day, but I think that the advantage, this is sort of what I was saying about like now people listen, like the advantage to being the director is like I can plan, I can pick locations that I know will photograph well. I can plan to shoot things at the right time of day for the place that we're shooting them, and like people listen, and that's been really, that would be hard to go back. Like I definitely still consider myself cinematographer, would love to keep shooting, but it would be hard to go back to a place where people don't listen when you're like, wait, this is the way to do this thing. This scene, Rina, I'll let you speak to it in terms of like how to, make it work in both directions. It wasn't like we shot one in the morning, one in the afternoon, like, but it's, it's a scene that's really emotional and sweet in the movie. And I think, the eye lines, well, Rina, you jump in.
Back here with everybody else. I couldn't have that happen to you, Russ. You understand? It's just the thing is, I thought that winning was enough, I was way out of my league with all that other stuff. Boxing is what I know.
Yeah, again, this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Although it's not like we're showing off the cinematography, I just love the scene and the relationship between our two main characters. And this is one of the scenes where I hope that it will be sunny. I just somehow imagined it to be like this kind of hot summer sunny day when I read the script. But I remember like maybe the day before the shoot or the few days leading up to that was overcast, it was all raining, was something not like very much like it's something I'd hoped for. But on the day, it was nice and sunny, hot. So I was really happy that it turned out the way I wanted it to be. I just wanted it to just like to look like this like harsh sunlight, and in terms of how we shot it, I don't remember us like struggling with the sound path or anything, or spending a long time shooting this scene. It was very simple that we had the camera very close to the eye line. We had Brian literally kind of wedging themselves against the camera so we can be as close to the eye lines as possible. And I remember shooting the scene and thinking, yeah, this film's going to be good. I love this scene.
That's always nice. That's always,
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, this works. I like watching these two. Did you clean it up at all? That's that thing of like when you're going for absolute verisimilitude, and that is like a guiding star of it, is also to sort of go at some point. I always say like it's like if you start cleaning it up, you just can't stop. Like everything then goes from there, and it's like, oh, either I'm not touching the sun and I'm just like working within it, or I have to clean everything up, which I'm sure even, Rachel knows this from doing like massive $200 million movies where you have to control things over so much time that you're like, now I'm like bringing in these massive fly swatters or construction cranes and lighting underneath them and all that sort of stuff that goes so far against the independent spirit of most small films, right? In that specific scene, you have that beautiful little highlight, and it feels like there's a little bit of light coming. That it feels like you've certainly helped them out, but I can't tell from how or when,
It was we had I think it was a 12 by, was it half soft frost? What's that?
Yeah, we did bring in overhead diffusion for the close-ups, and then I did have the circular poly to bounce the eye light back into the eyes. But it's very tricky with Jason's glasses. That was something that I struggled throughout the film because he's always wearing glasses, and I wanted to add eye light, but it's a tricky dance, not seeing the light in his glasses and that. But I think also the very last shot of the movie that we just saw of Clarissa on the bus. I remember like the earlier takes, the sun looked better on her, but then I remember Rachel texted me when she was editing, like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to use the one with the sun that's quite toppy, the one you don't like. But I was like, no, just go for it, like I love the imperfection. There's something about it's just I think we made the right choice. The mistake. I love everything else about it, and it's not about her looking beautiful, And again, like I guess it's maybe like the indie spirit where the there's some sort of imperfection, and I like that about it. In the beginning, I was like, it make just being a typical DP, like, please use this take because the sound was perfect then. But I think, yeah.
I look at that scene and remember it was like the air conditioning didn't work on the bus. It was like 100
It was so hot.
squatting with the camera, like
Yeah.
fully in a squat, sweat like dripping down our face.
Yeah.
And but you just, and we're supposed to actually have coverage for the scene. And that was a moment where it was like you see it and you're like, you don't need, I was like, Rina, I don't think we need anything else. Like we're telling it all in this piece of it. I think at one point we were going to be outside with him and his point of view of her, and it was like, we don't need any of that.
Yeah.
And my quads are still in pain when I look at it.
There's something that you take away from every time you do a project, but every time I do a project, I feel like what I learn is it's about the process of making something with people that you want to spend time with. That's actually more meaningful than the end product for me. That of course I want the movie to be good, and we do our best, and we BSC, blood, sweat and tears, try and achieve that. But what I look back on and what I take away from is the process of making something and trying to make something together. And the experience making this film with Rachel was very special. And we would hang out on weekends, box. She was better boxer than I was. We both got boxing tattoos after the film. It's on my body now, and it's in me, the experience of making this film. It was a really difficult movie to make. I don't know if there's any movie that's easy to make, but that's just something that stayed with me, that took away the experience and the memories. And yeah, I think that's something, the biggest takeaway.
Did it feel different in any way from just the other work you had done, whether it's in television or your music video, commercial work, and all that kind of stuff, as far as making a studio film?
It's definitely different from commercials that we do, because it's such a short experience. That we do have some regular directors that we have the relationship with, but commercial tends to be it's in and out. You meet your director for the first time, maybe on the tech recce, and then you spend maybe time together, maximum 2 weeks, maybe if it's the longest. And it's such a different experience making a movie with someone that you really become like the family. And because you're just together almost 24/7, or maybe like 18 hours 7 something like that. So you get to know each other very well. And but then, having said that, there's some TV shows that if it's a big TV show and the other director is not the showrunner, it's such a different experience making TV shows with a director who's hired to direct an episode. But this one felt like it's Rachel's movie, and so which the experience was, it just felt a lot more close to my heart, and I want to make movies that I feel something. In the different kinds of movies that I've been watching a lot of movies now that's the award season, and you enjoy watching something, but then at the end of the day, sometimes I'm trying to watch a movie that so I can feel something, and I want to feel moved, or I want to feel excited, or I think the fire inside that I feel moved, and also it's exciting watching these boxing matches, and that was something that I'd been wanting to make. So I feel lucky that I got to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's muted. I love that. It means a lot to me, and I feel
Oh.
similarly.
I want to ask you the same question, Rachel. I mean, as your first feature, which, listen, I've directed and you did it a lot better than me, is I also know what a different gear it is, and how it's different. What do you feel like? I'm sure you learned a multitude of things, but like, what was one or two of the biggest things you learned from this film?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. Like, I'll be probably unpacking and processing all of it for maybe the rest of my life. But like, the takeaways, I had this instinct about this project, about what it could be and what it could mean and how necessary it was in the universe. And and Clarissa is obviously such a model of resilience that I just kind of wouldn't let it die. And that meant for this, for this film, it was years of my life, like fighting to get it back up the second time. And then we had an actor that, had, let's just call it a scheduling conflict, and had to recast, got the actor that I'd always wanted, actually. One of the things that kind of became clear is that in the sort of everything that happens for a reason bucket, like my lead actress got to train twice. And I think that made a huge difference to the boxing. Brian Tyree Henry was my dream from the get-go, and actually aged into the role in a way, was finally kind of old enough to play a father figure. And obviously this collaboration was incredible, and maybe even like our studio, all the things, now we're coming out Christmas, which is like, you couldn't ask for a better release, and we're getting a wide theatrical release, which is like the fairy tale ending. So there's some of it is just, the idea of having faith in yourself and fighting for the things you believe in, and somehow that working out. And then I guess the other thing for me was like, I was really nervous about directing, not so much like working with actors, a little bit that, because I hadn't trained for it. I didn't go to film school to be a director. I went to film school to be a cinematographer. But really like putting yourself front and center on the thing, meaning all the things that go with it, like pushing the boulder up the mountain for sure, but also like walking the red carpet and public speaking and all of these things that still terrify the hell out of me, but really, I'm challenging myself in this new way and making myself vulnerable in this new way where like, I had been protected before, even on the films. I've been fortunate that most of the films I shot have found some success, but like the ones that didn't, there's usually some like, in the article, it's like, but the cinematography is beautiful. The cinematography is the saving grace of this disaster of a film. And you're just like, it doesn't make it, I still obviously feel for, you put so much of yourself into the film, you want the film to get the praise, but like you're protected when it doesn't work. And now to put yourself out there in a real way, if this hadn't worked, it would sting. It would sting really badly, and even now we're doing so well, thank God, with all the reviews and stuff. But like, 100 good ones and one bad one, like the bad one hurts, like in a way that you were sort of, neutral as a DP. It didn't hurt the same way. But yeah, I think ultimately, like, I've learned so much, and then obviously like it's just been really amazing to have these collaborations, and in the post side, like I had such a wonderful time getting to finally see this thing through, 20 years of like, you hand off your baby and you hope that somebody raises it well, and that they don't like, score it with schmaltzy music that makes you want to be like this, or they don't come back with a 5-hour cut of a movie that could have been 90 minutes, and now finally like actually getting to finish the vision and deliver it as you kind of imagine it's really fulfilling.
I mean, I know exactly what you mean in terms of still unpacking all the things to learn from this one. Yeah, it's such a different process than shooting, or at least that I found, that it also gave me such compassion and respect for all the directors I'd worked for before.
Yeah, so much, so much. You know, I have way more empathy for what they go through on set and outside of set and keeping the thing alive.
Well, listen, you guys, please go see this film. Christmas time. It's a great crowd-pleasing film with a lot of real emotion, and it's a great true story that everyone should know more about. You can check out these shots and, like, you know, of The Fire Inside on ShotDeck now, and we'll have all the rest.
Watch the movie first, then you can check out the shots.
Of course. No, this like when you want to reference it and use it because you're like, this is an amazing thing. I want to get that color from the prom and put, you know, and have a reference for it. And obviously you guys killed it, and, you know, you made a great film, and that's not easy to do. So everyone should see it, please.
In the theater, if they can.
That's where I saw it. Listen, nothing beats the theater. That's for darn sure.
The thing
So-
that I realized too is, like, I always thought it was about the visuals, but it's so much, at least with a boxing film, is about the sound design. You know, it's like you just can't recreate that even with a good. People are like, I have a great surround sound system, and it's like, but it's not 5.1, and
It's that, and it's also a commitment. It's like, no matter what, you have distractions at home. That's just the nature of the beast. And the theater, you've committed to this experience like you do when you go see a play or you go see a concert, and you're committed to, like, being there and thing. And so it's all the things. The theater is still why we make movies, for sure. All right, guys. Until next time.
Okay, thank you so much. Ciao.
Ciao.
See you, John.